Welcome back on American track of Agile by Example. Here in Warsaw it's already evening, but across the Atlantic Ocean where our speakers are, it's afternoon. On this track, we will have two interesting presentations, so stay tuned for more Agile by Example. First of them is Karaleise. Welcome, Karaleise. Nice to have you here on virtual stage of Agile by Example.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, great. Karaleise has over 10 years of experience being a business analyst in many different industries. She helps other business analysts to grow in their role. She is also author of Business Analyst's Job Market Report, available on Amazon. In her talk, she will share her experience with using different formats, user stories, and highlights user stories best practices. So, Karaleise, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Mikhail. I really appreciate it. Hi, everyone, and welcome to my talk on how to write good user stories. We have a lot to cover today. I'm very excited to share with you some points and some takes and some practical examples of how we actually do user stories in the real world. So let me jump in right away. A little bit more about me, right? Mikhail gave a great introduction, but I want to talk a little bit more. You might hear an accent, and that's because I'm Jamaican by birth. Right now, I live in Atlanta. It looks dark behind me. That's because I'm in my basement. They are making some construction, and I don't want the noise to interfere, so I'm here down here. But it's really delight where I am. So I'm from Jamaica. I've been working as a business analyst for a while. This is a picture of me and my daughter. We like to go hiking. She's much better at me at hiking, actually. She's the one who always says, "Come on, Mom, you can do it." You know, she's really good at that. When I'm not working on projects, I'm typically finding a waterfall somewhere. I'm attracted to water bodies, whether it's a beach or it's a waterfall. And here in Georgia, we have so many good waterfalls. So that's my weekend getaways sometimes. But my career has been as a business analyst. And that's what I spent most of my time doing. And I uncovered this role while I was working in a different role. I didn't even know that there was such a role as a business analyst. And then I was exposed to it and I was like, wow, this is great. This is the thing for me. So I've made it my career. And in those times, I've worked with several teams, agile teams, waterfall teams on building quality software. And it's really become a passion of mine. And so I'm going to be sharing with you today some of the projects I've worked on, talk a bit about business analysis and a little bit of user stories and how that works out in Agile. So one of my pet peeves is that there is no business analyst role in Agile Scrum, right? So Agile Scrum only has 3 roles: developers, product owners, and Scrum masters, but there is no role for business analysts. So that kind of hurts because we work so much with Agile teams and we're always trying to support the team, but we don't really have a role. So we need to figure out how we can solve for that. So in this session, we're going to talk about user stories, right? It's going to be all about user stories. We're going to talk about what makes a good user story and some examples from real world projects so they can see a concrete example of user story in action on a real project. So let's talk a little bit about the projects that I plan to share with you today. So there are 2 of them. One is called Action Plan Project. Now I've renamed it because I really don't have permission from the owners to talk about it. So I've kind of anonymized it a little bit just to keep it legal, right? So the Action Plan Project really is a task management feature tracking system, right? And so it's really geared towards salespeople. So salespersons are going to be using this to help them strategize how they can actually win the deal. So if you're in a sales team and you're working towards winning some $1 million contract, you really have to put a strategy together and you need to have tasks. And some of these teams can have 30 people, 45 people, really huge sales teams going after really, really huge deals. How do you help them to be more successful? How do you help them strategize their planning? And that's what the Action Plan Project was about. And it was mainly for the account managers as the users. The other project was Land and Expand. So land and expand is also kind of a sales organization term, right? So you've already gotten the account, they became a customer, they paid you money. How do you keep getting money out of them? How do you keep expanding? How do you keep upselling, cross-selling? What else can you do to get revenue out of that account? So how do you manage the ideas for growing revenue, right? That's what that project was about, targeting sales teams and how they increase the revenue. And it was also an integrated feature, just like the action plan project. Integrated means that it was sending data back and forth to CRMs and other software that would use the output from those systems. So in this discussion, we'll look at those two projects and see how user stories were used and some of the nuances of writing user stories for projects like these that are enterprise level projects. So imagine a sales team, right? Everybody crowded together, trying to come up with a strategy for how they're going to win this deal. They have the sales funnel, they're getting leads in, they're trying to figure out how these leads can convert into actual prospects and qualify those leads. So part of the whole sales process is how do you make sure that this is a person who is likely to buy, or a business that's likely to buy whatever it is that you're selling. And then once you get them to buy, how do you keep growing the revenue? Like, what do you do? How do you sell more things to them, keep them paying you more? Because you really have to expand the account and keep revenue generated from that account that you got already landed. So those are the projects, right? We're going to come back to them. Right now, we're going to talk a little bit about the user stories, and then we're going to switch into context of from those projects, how did we write user stories to solve for some of the problems that we encountered with those projects, right? So all about user stories. Who's excited, right? Isn't user stories one of those things that you're like, wow, I can't wait to go do some user stories, right? Or is it just me? Am I the only person excited about user stories? There you go. Mikhail's put his hand up. Awesome. And I'm sure there are others that I can't see who are also putting their hand up. All right, so we'll jump into this. What is a user story? Now, the term keeps floating around and people have different definitions of it, but actually user stories can be accredited back to Kent Beck as a part of the extreme programming methodology, right? So before the Agile brought all of these together, you had individual Agile methodologies, and user story was one of those from XP programming that was very useful. They would write it on a card and they would discuss it. It was something to be used for discussion. And if they didn't find the user story to be valuable, they could just tear it up and throw it away. It was very disposable, right? That's why it's on a card. So that's kind of where it came from. People think it comes from Scrum because it's so popular with Scrum, but really it came from XP programming or extreme programming. So it's a conversation starter, right? The point of the user story is to have discussions. It's to talk about it. It's to get the team aligned and thinking through this one problem that's on the user story and how we can actually add value to the user with whatever we're coming up with as solutions. It's small chunks of functionality that provide benefit to the user. So if there is no benefit to the user or the customer, then you're really not writing a user story at that point, right? So while user personas highlight who your users are, sorry, I'm fixing my computer here. User stories examine what they do, right? So that's some of the definitions of user stories. I'm sure you've heard a lot of this already. So what makes a user story good? Like, what makes a good user story?